20 innovative products from the 1980s that failed miserably. Do you still remember the 80s? A period of bursting ideas where the music was buzzing, the fashion was one of a kind, and the technology seemed straight out of science fiction movies. But not every bold idea reached glory. Some products, though ambitious, fell flat right after hitting the market. From bizarre tech gadgets to controversial convenience foods, today we're going to look back at 20 dream products that went up in smoke in the 1980s. Are you ready? Let's start our list with a familiar name in the tech world, but with a product that perhaps many have forgotten or tried to forget. Sony Beta Movie Recorder. Back in 1983, Sony tried to stir things up with a bold idea. They introduced the world's first all-in-one video camera, weighing 6 and 12 pounds. It was called the Beta Movie Recorder. Imagine that. No wires, no bulky recorder. This was one of the first camcorders where the camera and recorder were built into the same body. No tangled wires, no heavy setup. Just pick it up and shoot. Sounds great, right? For that era, this was an incredible step forward in portability and convenience for recording family moments. But here was the problem. While the idea was very promising, it recorded onto Betamax tape. The Betamax format, according to the source, looked great, but didn't last long on the mass market. This was because most people at the time had chosen the VHS Video Home System, home video system. Why? Because VHS let you record for longer. That was a huge advantage for families who wanted to record an entire sports game or a child's performance without constantly changing tapes. And it wasn't just the format issue. Unlike other camcorders at the time, this one didn't even let you review video right after shooting. You had to wait until you got home and played it on a Betamax player. That clearly wasn't fun at all. Think about it. You just shot a memorable scene, but couldn't check right away to see if it looked good. This significantly reduced the convenience. Plus, the price was no joke. It was very expensive, and consumers weren't willing to pay that much money. Despite its novel design, the Beta Movie Recorder lost out in the race against the VHS home video system. Sony had big dreams for this machine, but Betamax simply couldn't keep up. It's a classic example of advanced technology hitting roadblocks in format, features, and price. Speaking of failed home video formats, we can't help but mention the attempt by another giant in the electronics industry. RCA, Capacitance Electronic Disc, CED. Remember RCA, the Radio Corporation of America? They had high hopes back in 1981. RCA had developed a home video format initially called the Capacitance Electronic Disc, or CED for short. This system, also known as the RCA Video Disc System, was launched with the hope of leading the future of home video. CED was a video disc system that looked like a record, but was used for playing movies. It came in a plastic case, and you had to slide the whole disc into the player. At the time, it felt high-tech, different from cassette tapes. The system played movies on large discs similar to vinyl records, using a special stylus. Sounds impressive, right? But there were problems from the start. First, the picture quality wasn't great. Plus, these discs were very easily scratched, and even a tiny speck of dust could ruin your movie. Imagine the frustration of your favorite movie being interrupted just because of a small scratch or dust particle. Even worse, while CED could only do one thing, which was just play, nothing more, nothing less, the VHS and Betamax home video systems were already in homes. And what about VHS/Betamax? They allowed recording, pausing, rewinding, and fast-forwarding. Just months before the RCA video disc system launched, VHS appeared on the market. VHS quickly offered more convenience and better value. Sources say RCA didn't see this shift coming. RCA had spent years developing the CED system, but by the time it launched, the world had moved on. Consumers were already getting used to the flexibility of cassette tapes. Sales were low, and the company stopped production after just a few years. In fact, the RCA video disc is said to have contributed to sinking the RCA ship. Sources conclude it was a great idea, but at the wrong time. A costly lesson about the importance of keeping up with market trends and needs. From video to computers, the 80s were a time when every tech company wanted to get computers into people's hands. Atari, famous for video games, also took a shot at digital creativity. Atari CX-77 touch tablet. We know Atari from video games, but in 1984, Atari introduced another device, the CX-77 touch tablet. With a new Atari Artist program and this simple little device, the idea was you draw here and it appears there. Magic at the time. No typing and no programming needed. This tablet was a drawing pad that allowed users to create artwork on their TV screens. It came with a stylus and the Atari Artist software, offering 128 colors and various patterns. Users could draw, erase, and even trace images placed under a clear overlay. This was a glimpse into digital creativity, a field that would later explode. However, despite its creative potential, this tablet didn't succeed. A big problem, according to sources, was the lack of additional software support beyond Atari Artist. There weren't many programs that used this tablet. This limited its functionality and appeal. You had a creative tool, but not much material to work with. Another issue was user interest. Most people in the 80s used computers for games or basic tasks. Digital art was still very new. Few people saw the need for a digital drawing pad. Furthermore, to store artwork, it required a separate program recorder, adding complexity to the process. The CX-77 touch tablet was ahead of its time. It offered a glimpse into digital creativity, but lacked the support and audience needed to succeed. It's proof that a groundbreaking idea still needs a supporting ecosystem and a market ready to embrace it. From a game company trying its hand at computers, now it's a true computer giant trying to enter the home market, but with a controversial product, IBM PCjr. We can't talk about 80s computers without mentioning IBM. IBM wanted to bring computers into people's homes. In 1984, they launched the PCjr, advertised as the home computer that's growing by leaps and bounds. It looked nice and had some interesting features, promising to be the tech hub for the family. But according to sources, things didn't go smoothly. The PCjr's biggest problem, and its fatal flaw, was the keyboard. It was small and hard to type on. People even called it the chiclet keyboard because the keys looked like little pieces of chewing gum. This keyboard felt cheap and unworthy of the IBM name. Imagine the frustration of a user used to the high-quality keyboard of an IBM PC suddenly having to type on this. Another issue was compatibility. Many popular personal computer programs didn't work correctly on it. This confused users and made the PCjr difficult to rely on. You buy an IBM computer, you expect it to run all the popular software, but that wasn't the reality. Furthermore, it was too expensive for a home computer, especially one that didn't work as users expected. As a result, buyers quickly became frustrated. IBM tried to fix things, but the damage was done. Sales were terrible. They stopped production just over a year later. The PCjr story is a clear lesson. A strong name can't save a weak product. If you thought IBM missed the mark, wait until you see what Kodak did with film in the next item. Kodak Disc 4000. Kodak, a name synonymous with photography for decades. In 1982, Kodak launched the Disc 4000, hoping to change how people took pictures. This camera was advertised as having rapid automatic film advance, helping you not miss any moment. What were its strengths? It was small, easy to carry, and simple to use. You just put in a round film disc and pressed the button. Initially, people liked this novel design. It looked modern and much more convenient than traditional roll film cameras, but the photos told a different story. Picture quality was the main issue. The pictures were blurry and dark. Sources specifically state the tiny negatives on the film disc couldn't capture clear details. This was a huge disappointment for users. You buy a camera to preserve memories, and you want those memories to be clear. Although the camera looked very modern, the image quality ruined its chances. Users didn't want to preserve memories that looked bad. Furthermore, photo processing stores didn't really like processing disc film either. It caused extra trouble for them. Kodak pushed this idea for a while, but it never succeeded. The Disc 4000 quickly faded away, and Kodak had to pivot. Apple, a company known for innovative products, wasn't immune to missteps in the 80s either, especially when they tried to make computers portable. Apple Macintosh Portable. Apple released the Macintosh Portable in 1989, hoping to start a new trend in mobile computing. At the time, the idea of a powerful computer you could carry with you was appealing. Apple created a device with a full keyboard and a good screen. But, according to sources, at 16 pounds, it was far from easy to carry. Imagine lugging a computer that heavy around. Users quickly encountered problems. Battery life was a fatal flaw. The battery was very poor. And sometimes, the computer wouldn't turn on unless the battery was fully charged. This was clearly a major limitation for a device designed for on-the-go use. Furthermore, it came with a very high price tag. Most people couldn't afford it, and those who could afford it felt it didn't offer enough value for the money. Apple aimed to lead the mobile market, but this product didn't meet expectations. It was too heavy, too expensive, and didn't live up to user expectations. From a tech giant like Apple, now it's the story of a toy company trying to transition into the home computer field. Coleco Adam computer. Coleco, famous for its video game success, released the Adam computer in 1983. They hoped to turn their video game success into a win in the home computer arena. The plan looked great on paper. The system came with a printer, a word processor, and a digital data drive. It even worked with ColecoVision games, leveraging the company's existing advantage. Coleco called out to customers, "Wait, don't buy your family computer until you compare it to Adam, the complete computer system today, only $499. But according to sources, things quickly went wrong. Many units that reached customers were dead right out of the box. Others broke within days. It was a bad start and caused serious loss of trust. The biggest problem was the printer. The printer, which powered the entire system, was very noisy and unreliable. And here's the key point. If the printer broke, the computer wouldn't even start. Imagine your computer being completely useless just because its power supply unit broke. Sources suggest Coleco rushed the Adam release to make the holiday season, but that rush led to sloppy hardware and angry buyers. Software support was also very weak. Customers returned machines and lost faith in the brand. Coleco hoped to enter the computer market strongly, but the Adam's problems crushed that dream before it could even begin. Stepping away from the tech world for a bit, let's move to a product failure that is perhaps one of the weirdest things to ever happen in the consumer goods industry. Colgate frozen lasagna. In the 1980s, Colgate made a move nobody expected. The toothpaste giant decided to launch its own line of frozen foods. One of those products was Colgate frozen lasagna. The idea behind it was pretty simple. Colgate had strong brand recognition. They thought people would trust their name on food. But, according to sources, that trust didn't transfer to the food sector. Consumers saw the Colgate label and thought of cool, minty toothpaste, not a warm meal. The mix of food and personal hygiene branding was simply too weird. Most people immediately felt uncomfortable. They couldn't imagine eating something associated with brushing teeth. Colgate lasagna failed miserably. Consumers didn't buy it. and stores didn't want to stock it either. Colgate quickly pulled the product from the market. It's still remembered as one of the strangest product choices ever. A memorable lesson about the power of brand perception and how you can't just randomly expand into unrelated areas. Speaking of weird food ideas, another giant in the fast food industry also had a less than successful experiment: McDonald's McDLT. Now let's talk about the McDLT. This is when McDonald's tried to give you homework along with your burger. Did you hear about the new McDonald's McDLT? It was advertised as the best lettuce and tomato hamburger ever. Why the best? Because the hot part stayed hot and the cool part stayed cool. The McDLT was McDonald's attempt to offer a fresher tasting burger by keeping the hot and cold parts separate. The lettuce and tomato were placed on one side of a large styrofoam box, while the beef patty was kept on the other side. Customers had to assemble it themselves. While the taste was reportedly okay, the packaging caused problems. It was bulky, wasteful, and used a lot of styrofoam. This was happening at a time when people were becoming more environmentally conscious. Many people didn't like creating extra waste or having to do extra work to eat their burger. People went to McDonald's because they wanted fast, ready-to-eat meals, not DIY burgers. The McDLT disappeared quietly and is now remembered mostly for its strange and wasteful design. From bizarre meals, let's move to a drink you might have tried if you were a fan of candy: LifeSavers Soda. This is Karen sucking her thumb, and this is her older brother trying to stop her. No, that's not an official ad, but it shows the simplicity of the original product. LifeSavers decided to turn their popular candy into a soft drink in the 1980s. The idea was to give fans the same sweet taste in liquid form. On paper, the idea sounded fun and colorful. The company hoped that people would enjoy sipping a soda that tasted exactly like their favorite candy, but reality didn't turn out so well. The main problem was the soda was too sweet. Most people found it hard to drink more than a few sips. What worked for candy didn't work for a drink. The flavor was too intense and not refreshing. Even with bright branding and a recognizable name, this product didn't succeed. Stores pulled it from shelves and the company dropped the idea. It became another reminder that not everything sweet belongs in a bottle. Speaking of putting things that don't fit into the wrong packaging, the cigarette industry also had a costly attempt to create a cleaner product: Reynolds Premiere cigarette. This cigarette will give you a smoke with a cleaner taste, a cleaner smell, a cleaner feel. Premiere, the cleaner smoke. In the late 1980s, Reynolds spent millions of dollars creating a smokeless cigarette called Premiere. Instead of burning tobacco, it heated it, with the goal of providing a cleaner way to smoke. But according to sources, smokers didn't like it. The taste was poor, it felt weird, and the smell wasn't pleasant. Plus, it looked weird, making people feel uncomfortable using it in public. The idea was to reduce smoke and odor, but the final product didn't appeal to users in the way the company expected. The company spent about $325 million on this project, but it failed quickly. Stores couldn't sell it, and users weren't interested. Reynolds withdrew it from the market, losing a huge amount of money. Premiere is now remembered as one of the most expensive product failures in the history of the tobacco industry. From cigarettes to drinks, Pepsi also tried a strange idea about when to consume their product: Pepsi AM. Pepsi has a taste for life. In 1989, Pepsi thought people might want to drink soda instead of coffee in the morning, so they created Pepsi AM. This soda had more caffeine than regular Pepsi. It was made for people who didn't like coffee but still wanted a little energy boost to start the day. The idea was bold, and the name sounded strong and energetic. But even with a strong name like that, it didn't work. Most people simply weren't ready to drink soda for breakfast. The habit of drinking coffee or tea in the morning was too deeply ingrained. Furthermore, it didn't taste much different from regular Pepsi either, So there wasn't a good reason to buy it. Why choose Pepsi AM, possibly at a higher price, when regular Pepsi could provide a similar energy boost? Pepsi AM quickly faded and was quietly pulled from shelves. Leaving the things we eat and drink, let's look at a car from the 80s that was both bold and confusing. Nissan Pulsar Sportback. Introducing the all-new '87 Nissan Pulsar NX. The Nissan Pulsar NX Sportback tried to be two cars in one. With a modular rear hatch, drivers could switch between a sporty coupe and a small minivan. This was a bold, futuristic idea, but it didn't catch on with buyers. The design looked weird, not really a good-looking coupe, and also not a practical minivan. And the extra cost for the Sportback option didn't help. Consumers were confused about its purpose. Was it fun, practical, or both? The lack of clarity in product positioning made it hard for consumers to decide whether to buy. Sales remained low, and the model disappeared quickly. Although it stood out from the crowd, it became more of a weird curiosity than a success. Nissan took a risk, but the market simply wasn't ready for it. Returning to the computer realm, Mattel, another toy company, also tried to turn its game console into a full-featured computer system. Mattel Intellivision keyboard component. Make playing like this possible just by adding a computer keyboard. Discover Intellivision. It can change your family. In 1980, Mattel promised to turn their Intellivision game system into a complete computer with a new keyboard component. On paper, this keyboard component was fully featured. It had a tape drive, a microphone, and extra memory. It sounded like a great upgrade, turning a game console into a tool for learning and work. But things quickly went wrong. The product was constantly delayed. It didn't hit the test market until late 1981. Eventually, it launched in early 1982, but only in a few cities. And the price? A steep $600. Even worse, it had almost no working software. You bought the hardware, but there was nothing to run on it. Customers were angry, and even the government started investigating it. By mid-1982, Mattel had pulled it from stores and issued refunds. A big dream failed in just 2 years. From tech failures, let's talk about a car that became a pop culture icon thanks to cinema, but was a failure in the real market. Delorean DMC-12. The DeLorean's gull-wing doors open easily, beckoning you inside. The Delorean DMC-12 looked like something out of the future. It had a stainless steel body and cool gull-wing doors. When it appeared in the movie Back to the Future, it became a pop culture icon. Who doesn't remember this car? But the real car was far from perfect. Its engine was weak, and its speed didn't match its sporty look. Sources say drivers were disappointed with its performance on the road. Aggressive looks, but lacked power. It was also more expensive than many other cars with better performance. Inside, the interior didn't feel luxurious or special. The company rushed production, and quality suffered. Sales remained low. Fewer than 9,000 cars were produced before the company went bankrupt. Although the DMC-12 is still remembered today, it failed on the market. It was a car that looked great, but didn't drive that well. The dream was big, but the reality didn't live up to expectations. Continuing with strange modes of transport from the 80s, we have an attempt to create a tiny and ultra-economical personal vehicle, Sinclair C5. The Sinclair C5, 399 pounds. Want to buy one? Want to see one? Or simply want to read all about it? The Sinclair C5 was a small, one-seat electric vehicle, launched in 1985. It looked like a mix between a go-kart and a bicycle, powered by standard batteries. It was designed as a cheap and clean way to get around town, but it faced criticism. Its looks were panned as strange, and the top speed was only 15 miles per hour. Imagine moving at that speed in modern traffic. Its low-slung design made drivers feel unsafe, especially when next to larger cars, and poor protection against bad weather added to the problems. Although it was an early attempt in the electric vehicle field, this vehicle didn't attract buyers, and the company stopped production after just 1 year. From personal vehicles, let's go back to personal computers, a computer that impressed with its graphics and sound power, but still couldn't survive. Commodore Amiga computers. Coming up is a computer that amazed everyone with its power and graphics, but still couldn't survive. Let's talk about the rise and fall of the Amiga computer. The Commodore Amiga 500 was advertised as the future of computing for the family, personal education, creative applications, and the business environment. The Amiga was one of the most advanced home computers at the time. Launched in 1985, it had excellent graphics, sound, and multitasking capabilities. This made it perfect for games, animation, and video work. It was truly a powerful and versatile machine for creative people. But these computers encountered problems that held them back. They lacked memory protection, so programs could crash easily. Early models needed multiple boot disks just to start up, making the usage process complicated. And software support was very weak. Later versions like the Amiga 600 even removed useful features and confused buyers. Although the Amiga had excellent technology, it was often difficult to use, lacked power compared to expectations or other competitors in the same price range, or was incomplete. These weaknesses led people to switch to simpler, more reliable personal computers. ViewMaster. Did you think ViewMaster was just for viewing pictures? In 1988, it tried to jump into the gaming field, and things got strange quickly. ViewMaster Interactive Vision. In 1988, ViewMaster tried to combine television and video games with interactive vision. This was a console based on the VHS home video system that allowed kids to watch shows with characters like The Muppets, Sesame Street, and favorite Disney characters while using a joystick and buttons to make choices. It even had 2 audio tracks and interactive video overlays to give players the feeling they were part of the story. Sounds interesting, right? The idea of an interactive TV viewing experience was truly unique. But it was too limited. It needed a video cassette recorder, VCR, to work, adding a hardware requirement that not every family had. The gameplay was clunky, not smooth or engaging like games on dedicated systems, and it felt more like a toy than a real console. Competing systems at the time, like the Nintendo Entertainment System, were far ahead. Despite a fun idea, the interactive vision didn't succeed and quickly faded from memory. From the world of interactive toys, let's move to a product from a very big name in the computer world, right after he left Apple. Next Computer, Steve Jobs. I'm Steve Jobs, and I make computers. It's called the Next Station. It's a display, keyboard, mouse, software. After Steve Jobs left Apple, he introduced the Next Computer in 1988. This machine looked very futuristic. It had powerful features like advanced graphics, a built-in digital signal processor, and the Next Step software. It was truly an impressive machine technologically. It was designed for schools and researchers. But the $6,500 price tag made it too expensive for most people, even in the environments it targeted. It also didn't support popular software, which limited its usability in many areas. Therefore, very few people bought it. However, despite its commercial failure, Next left its mark. Tim Berners-Lee used a Next Computer to create the first web browser. Ultimately, it was a great idea that didn't sell, becoming more of a tech legend than a market success. Leaving the world of computers, let's head to a pair of sneakers that tried an inflatable idea to improve performance. Reebok Pump shoes. The greatest performance athletic shoe in the world, Reebok Pump. Pump it up and air it out. Reebok launched the Pump shoes in 1989 to offer something new and high-tech. These shoes had an inflatable system that allowed users to pump air into the tongue of the shoe for a custom fit. This was an interesting idea and quickly grabbed attention, especially after National Basketball Association, NBA, star Dee Brown wore them in a slam dunk contest. It was a very effective marketing strategy initially, but the excitement didn't last. The shoes were expensive, and the pump feature didn't really improve performance much as expected. Competitors like Nike focused on actual athletic performance, while Reebok's technology started to feel like a gimmick. Over time, interest faded, and the pump shoes became more of a fashion memory than a performance success. Top 20 Cringiest Things from the 80s. The 1980s. What a wild, colorful, unforgettable decade. From outrageous fashion to booming pop culture and early tech trends, it was a time when more was always better. But let's be honest, some of it didn't age too well. Today, we're taking a fun and cringe-worthy trip down memory lane to look at the most over-the-top, awkward, and downright bizarre trends of the 80s. These were the things we all thought were cool back then, but now, you might just find yourself asking, what were we thinking? Shoulder pads. If there's one fashion trend that truly defined the 1980s, it's shoulder pads. You couldn't turn on the TV, walk into an office, or flip through a catalog without seeing someone, usually a woman, rocking a blazer with shoulders wide enough to land a plane on. But shoulder pads weren't just a style statement, they were a power move. In a decade where more women were entering the workforce and climbing the corporate ladder, fashion became armor. Wearing a structured suit with sharp shoulder pads told the world, I'm just as capable, just as strong, and I belong in this boardroom. Icons like Margaret Thatcher and Joan Collins on Dynasty made the look legendary. Those commanding silhouettes gave off confidence, authority, and just a touch of glam. But over time, the look went from fierce to, well, kind of funny. The bigger the pads got, the more cartoonish they started to look. Still, fashion is a cycle. Believe it or not, shoulder pads made a comeback in the late 2010s and into the 2020s, though thankfully, a bit more subtle this time around. Geometric patterned shirts. In the 1980s, fashion wasn't just a style choice, it was a full-blown statement, and nothing shouted louder than those wild geometric patterned shirts. You know the ones. Bright, bold, and absolutely bursting with clashing shapes, zigzags, and colors that could practically give you a headache. It's like someone asked, how many triangles, squares, and neon stripes can we fit on one shirt? And designers responded, all of them, and then some. These shirts looked less like clothing and more like walking pieces of abstract art, modern museum-worthy, but on your uncle at a barbecue. And somehow, the crazier the pattern, the higher the price. Some of these chaotic masterpieces were selling for hundreds, even thousands of dollars, just because they had more overlapping lines or layers of geometric madness. Fashion in the 80s didn't whisper, it blared through boombox speakers. Today, these shirts are a guaranteed hit at any 80s-themed party, but if you wear one on a regular Tuesday, don't be surprised if people think you stepped out of a time machine or straight out of a Miami Vice fever dream. One thing's for sure. Subtlety was not on the menu. Clocks on chains. Wristwatches? Classic. Pocket watches. Vintage. But clocks on chains. Now that's something only the 1980s could dream up and make happen. Enter Flavor Flav, the hype man of Public Enemy, and the undisputed king of wearing actual wall clocks around his neck. And we're not talking tiny novelty items. These were full-blown, pull-it-off a doctor's waiting room clocks, swinging from gold chains like they belonged in a museum, or maybe a furniture store. In a 1994 interview with MTV, Flavor Flav explained that it all started with stopwatches, then escalated to full clocks. Why? Because in his words, time is heavy, man. Time is heavy. For him, it was a message. a reminder of how valuable time is in our lives. And somehow, that message became a fashion statement. Let's be honest, almost no one else could pull it off. But for Flav, it became iconic. It's still his signature look to this day. Whether you think it was genius or just plain ridiculous, there's no denying. Clocks on chains were a uniquely 80s form of self-expression. New Coke. When you think of soda, you think of Coca-Cola, America's classic. But in the early 1980s, Pepsi started stealing the spotlight. Taste tests were showing younger consumers preferred Pepsi's sweeter flavor, and Coca-Cola's dominance was slipping. So, what did Coke do? They changed everything. In 1985, they introduced New Coke, a reformulated version of their beloved soft drink. It was smoother, sweeter, and meant to compete head-to-head with Pepsi. The launch came with glitzy ads, catchy slogans, and a whole lot of confidence. But America wasn't having it. People missed the original. Fans were outraged. Late-night hosts joked about it. Stores were flooded with complaints. And loyal drinkers even started grassroots campaigns demanding the return of Coca-Cola Classic. Just 79 days after launching New Coke, the company gave in and brought the original formula back to national celebration. Some even believe it was all a clever marketing ploy. Make them miss it, then bring it back stronger. Whether that's true or not, one thing's clear. Coke may have stumbled, but they came out on top. In the end, the New Coke saga didn't just change soda. It became one of the boldest marketing misfires, or masterstrokes, in pop culture history. Family portraits. Back in the 1980s, getting a family portrait wasn't something casual. It was an event. No smartphones, no selfies. If you wanted a nice photo, you had to dress up, fix your hair, and head to a professional photo studio. And, oh boy, the results were unforgettable. Think teased-up hair stacked sky-high, shoulder pads that could rival a linebacker's, and sweaters so loud they practically screamed. But it wasn't just the fashion. What really pushed these portraits into cringe-worthy territory were the awkward poses. Floating heads superimposed over serious stares, hands on shoulders in the stiffest possible way, and everyone looking like they were auditioning for a cheesy soap opera. Some families even color-coordinated outfits, usually in matching neon or pastel, that made them look like backup dancers for a Huey Lewis video. These photos were meant to show unity and love, but now they mostly show how hilariously offbeat the 80s really were. Don't believe it? Just search awkward 80s family portraits online. There's an entire internet subculture dedicated to collecting these wonderfully terrible masterpieces, and honestly, we kind of love them for how authentically weird they are. Which of these 80s trends did you proudly rock back in the day? And which one makes you cringe the most now? Crimped hair. If there's one hairstyle that screams I lived through the 80s, it's crimped hair. Though it first popped up in the late 70s, thanks to Barbra Streisand and a Hollywood stylist named Jerry Cosenza, it was the 1980s that turned this wild zigzag style into a full-blown obsession. With a hot iron that pressed hair into tiny, sharp waves, women everywhere were trading in their smooth, straight locks for a look that said, I'm bold, I'm loud, and I'm totally on trend. Crimped hair became the thing. You'd see it on music videos, red carpets, school photos, and everywhere in between. It didn't matter if you were a teenager or a mom. If you had hair, chances are, you crimped it. Looking back, reactions are pretty mixed. Some people laugh at old photos and say, what were we thinking? Others still look back fondly, calling it fun and fearless. And maybe that's why, every 10 to 15 years, crimped hair tries to make a comeback, even if only for a minute. Velcro sneakers. Do you have strong feelings about shoelaces? Maybe you thought they were just too much hassle. Well, you weren't alone, because in the 1980s, Velcro sneakers swept in like a miracle from the future. People loved them. No tying, no double knots, no tripping over loose laces. Just slap 'em shut and go. For a generation trying to save time and look stylish doing it, Velcro felt like the ultimate upgrade. Comfortable, supportive, and, at the time, considered pretty trendy, especially on white leather sneakers with flashy stripes or space-age vibes. But let's be honest, Velcro didn't stay cool for long. The straps wore out, the hooks got filled with lint and dirt, and worst of all, they started to look kind of childish. That rip-rip sound when you took them off didn't help either. Before long, Velcro sneakers went from high-tech to, "Hey, are those your kids' shoes?" Today, they're still around, mostly for toddlers and folks looking for pure convenience. And hey, we're not judging. But back in the 80s, Velcro sneakers weren't just practical. For a hot second, they were the future. Parachute pants. Let's clear something up right away. Parachute pants are not the same as MC Hammer pants. While Hammer rocked those big, billowy trousers in the early 90s, parachute pants from the mid-80s were a different beast altogether. Tight-fitting, shiny, and made almost entirely of nylon. The name? It came from the material, lightweight, swishy nylon, the same kind used to make actual parachutes. And yes, when you walked, they made that distinctive swish-swish sound with every step. Originally designed for functionality in breakdancing, since nylon helped reduce friction with the floor, these pants quickly became a street fashion staple. Suddenly, you didn't need to be a b-boy spinning on cardboard to wear them. All you needed was confidence, and maybe a Walkman blasting Run DMC. Looking back, it's easy to laugh. They were loud in every sense, visually, audibly, and stylistically. But back in the day, parachute pants were the ultimate way to say, "I've got moves, even if I don't actually break dance." Today, no one's really wearing them, except maybe ironically at an 80s party. But for a brief moment, these shiny nylon wonders were cooler than cool. Thank you for watching. To continue with more content, comment "yes" to let us know you're still following. The mullet. The mullet. Perhaps the most mocked and strangely beloved hairstyle of the entire 1980s. If you didn't live through it, you might think it was just for hockey players or small-town rockers. But you'd be way off. The mullet was everywhere. It crossed social lines, music genres, and even professions. From school teachers to pop stars, the message was clear. Short and neat in the front, long and wild in the back. That iconic phrase, "business in the front, party in the back," wasn't just a joke. It was the ethos of an era. Some credit Kiefer Sutherland's look in The Lost Boys with bringing the mullet to the mainstream, though he once said it was actually a tribute to Billy Idol. Either way, it became the cut of choice for men who wanted edge without giving up formality. Or so they thought. Today, the mullet is mostly a punchline, or a retro party wig. But back then, it was bold, rebellious, and somehow totally normal. Sure, it's hard to pull off in modern times, but we have to give the 80s credit. The mullet had guts. Suits with pastel shirts and ties. Let's be honest, on Miami Vice, pastel suits looked incredible. Don Johnson's Crockett and Philip Michael Thomas's Tubbs could pull off pale pinks, baby blues, and soft lavenders like they were born for it. The open collars, the effortless cool, it just worked on screen. But for the rest of us, not so much. Inspired by the show's runaway popularity, everyday folks across America tried to bring that pastel swagger into their own wardrobes. Out came the mint green shirts, the lavender ties, and the off-white sport coats. Unfortunately, instead of looking like TV detectives chasing criminals on South Beach, most of us ended up looking like we were headed to a wedding reception in a soap opera. This look was so tied to Miami Vice that you couldn't wear a pastel suit without someone joking, "Hey, where's your speedboat, Crockett?" It was stylish, in a very specific, very 1980s kind of way. And unless you had the swagger to match, it was easy to end up looking like you'd borrowed your cousin's prom outfit. Still, there's no denying, when done right, pastel suits had attitude. Just maybe not for everyday wear. Sweaters draped over shoulders. Ah yes, the ultimate 80s symbol of prep school privilege. The sweater, not worn, but draped oh so carefully over the shoulders. It didn't matter if it was 80 degrees outside or snowing sideways. If you were part of the preppy crowd, you knew the drill. Instead of wearing sweaters the normal way, on your arms and torso like a regular human being, fashion-forward elites of the decade treated them like oversized scarves. Tied loosely around the neck or tucked just enough to show the designer label, these sweaters became more of a statement piece than a source of warmth. It was all about the look. Clean, polished, and unmistakably upscale. Whether you were on the tennis court, sailing with friends, or just pretending to do either, that sweater around the neck move screamed, "I'm classy, I'm confident, and I probably go to an Ivy League school." Looking back though, it's a bit confusing. If it's cold, just wear the sweater. If it's hot, why bring it at all? But logic took a back seat to style in the 1980s, and for the preppy elite, those draped sweaters were non-negotiable. Val speak. Whether you thought it was like totally bitchin' or it made you want to gag me with a spoon, the 1980s gave us one of the most unforgettable and hilarious language trends of all time. Val speak. Born in California's San Fernando Valley and catapulted into the mainstream thanks to Frank Zappa's 1982 hit Valley Girl, featuring his real-life daughter Moon Unit, Val speak wasn't just slang. It was a whole vibe. Think, high-pitched voices, dramatic pauses, and the word like used every 5 seconds. A typical sentence might sound like, "So like, Jennifer, are you and Vinny going to the freshman dance? I mean, like, I don't know, you know? Like, I know he likes me, but like, I don't know." Sound familiar? That's because it never really went away. The 90s brought us Cher from Clueless, basically a Valley Girl reboot in designer clothes. And even today, shades of Val speak pop up all over pop culture. Sure, it's easy to poke fun at now, but Val speak was more than just a joke. It was a snapshot of 80s teen culture, mall life, and the California dream, all wrapped in a very likable accent. Betamax. If you grew up in the 80s, or even the early 90s, you probably remember renting movies from Blockbuster, rewinding tapes, and popping in your favorite flicks on VHS. But before VHS took over, there was another contender, Betamax. Launched by Sony in 1975, Betamax actually hit the market first. Many people even claimed it had better picture quality than VHS. In the beginning, Betamax looked like it might dominate the home video world. Tech-savvy consumers praised it, and it had a loyal following. But as history shows, better doesn't always mean bigger. Betamax had a few major setbacks. Its recording time was shorter, and the machines were more expensive. That gave VHS an edge, and once video rental stores noticed, they started stocking more VHS tapes. Before long, Beta was left behind, slowly fading into tech obscurity. One cheeky commentator once joked, maybe they should have called it Alpha Max. Oh wait, no, Beta. Ouch. Today, Betamax is a nostalgic footnote in the tech timeline, proof that even a superior product can lose the race if it's not what the public wants. Still, if you had a Betamax, you were part of an elite and slightly stubborn club of early home theater fans. If one of these trends came back today, which one would you secretly love to see again? Aquanet hairspray. The towering hairstyles of the 1980s didn't just happen, they were engineered. And the secret weapon behind every sky-high bang and gravity-defying wave? One word, Aquanet. This wasn't just hairspray. Aquanet was practically industrial strength. One spray could freeze a curl in place for hours. 2 sprays? You weren't moving that hair all day. The bigger your hairstyle, the more Aquanet you needed. And, boy, did we go big. We all dreamed of looking like our favorite pop stars or glam rock icons. But more often than not, the result was less music video fabulous and more helmet made of hair. And let's not forget the smell. Walk into any 80s era bathroom, public or private, and wham! That unmistakable Aquanet scent hit you like a ton of bricks. There were even Aquanet shampoos and conditioners with silk protein, which promised to soften what the hairspray had turned into solid plastic. But let's be honest, nothing could move that hair once it was set. Still, if you rocked a giant, do with confidence. Chances are someone noticed, and maybe even smiled in admiration. Acid-washed jeans. Ah, acid-washed jeans. Nothing says I survived the 80s quite like a pair of denim that looks like it lost a fight with a bucket of bleach. For a while, it felt like everyone was either wearing them or trying to DIY their own version at home with actual bleach and a whole lot of hope. These jeans were bold, loud, a little bit punk, and a little bit glam. The mottled, high-contrast look made it seem like your jeans had been through something and came out cooler on the other side. The more extreme the fade, the better. They came in all styles, tight-fitting, baggy, cuffed, high-waisted, and were often paired with oversized jackets, neon tops, or if you were feeling really wild, more acid-washed denim. Yes, double denim was a thing, and the bolder the wash, the better. While they're often listed today as an honorable mention in lists of questionable fashion trends, let's be fair, acid-washed jeans were a vibe. They were rebellious, eye-catching, and totally 80s. And honestly, some of us still kinda love them. Car surfing. Most of the cringe-worthy trends from the 80s were harmless, bad fashion, cheesy slang, giant hair. But car surfing? That was something else entirely. Just like it sounds, car surfing involved climbing on top of a moving vehicle and trying to ride it like a surfboard. It looked totally radical in Teen Wolf, 1985, with Michael J. Fox standing confidently atop a van while the Beach Boys blasted in the background. But in real life, it was seriously dangerous. It didn't take much for things to go wrong. If the driver hit the brakes or took a sharp turn, the surfer could be thrown like a rag doll. Accident reconstruction expert Mike Markazowski even demonstrated how deadly it could be, even at low speeds. And it wasn't just an 80s problem. The CDC later tracked 58 reported deaths and 41 non-fatal injuries from car surfing between 1990 and 2008. That's not nostalgia. It's a wake-up call. Sure, we can look back on the 80s and laugh at parachute pants or shoulder pads, but car surfing? That's one trend we can all agree should stay in the past. Indoor smoking. Today, it's hard to imagine lighting up a cigarette in a grocery store or office, but in the 1980s, it was completely normal. Whether you were in a restaurant, a plane, or a waiting room, someone was probably puffing away right next to you. Even though the dangers of secondhand smoke were becoming well known, by 1986, the U.S. Surgeon General had issued warnings. Indoor smoking was still widely accepted. Restaurants might ask, smoking or non-smoking? But let's be honest, the smoke didn't respect those imaginary walls. As one traveler put it, the smoke permeates the whole cabin. And yes, you could even smoke on airplanes. The tobacco industry knew the risks and spent years downplaying them, working hard to delay tighter regulations. Meanwhile, non-smokers were left to breathe in what one flight attendant described as, like being at the bottom of a coal mine. Eventually, the tide turned. Health advocates pushed for change, and slowly but surely, smoking bans were put in place across the country. Now, it seems shocking that this was ever allowed, but for a good chunk of the 80s, smoking indoors was as common as shoulder pads and big hair, neon belts and elastic suspenders. In the 1980s, accessories weren't meant to blend in. They were meant to scream, and nothing screamed louder than neon belts and stretchy elastic waistbands that looked like they'd been made out of bungee cords dipped in highlighter ink. Whether you were cinching your oversized sweater or adding a pop of color to your acid-washed jeans, these elastic belts were a fashion staple. The brighter, the better. Hot pink, electric green, neon yellow, you name it. They usually had big plastic buckles or Velcro fasteners, and sometimes even fake patent leather finishes that cracked after a few wears. But let's be honest, they weren't about function. These belts weren't holding anything up. They were there to be seen, especially in school photos, mall meetups, or aerobics classes where everyone looked like they had just stepped out of a Richard Simmons video. Today, those belts feel more like costume props than serious fashion, but they were once the final touch that made an outfit feel totally tubular. Outdated computers. It's hard to believe now, but there was a time when owning a personal computer wasn't common. It was a big deal. In the 1980s, home computers started making their way into living rooms and kids' bedrooms across America. And suddenly, being a computer geek wasn't such a bad thing. So what did people do with these futuristic machines? Well, mostly schoolwork. Maybe play a pixelated game or two. Some models even came with cartridges that taught you stuff, though the graphics looked like they were drawn by a toddler. Want to load a program? No problem. Just pop in a cassette tape, press play on the tape deck, and wait, and wait, and wait some more. Processing speeds were ludicrously slow, and those chunky keyboards and boxy monitors were about as stylish as a microwave with a personality disorder. Still, at the time, it felt like magic. Even if typing a basic document took longer than writing it by hand, people were hooked. But like most tech, these machines aged quickly. What once seemed cutting edge now looks like it belongs in a museum, or maybe a thrift store bin marked nostalgia. Fax machines. Before email, Dropbox, or even dial-up internet, there was the fax machine. And in the 1980s, it felt like sorcery. Imagine this. You place a piece of paper into a strange machine, punch in a phone number, and voila, that exact document appears on another piece of paper somewhere else in the world. For office workers and businesses, this wasn't just technology, it was a revolution. Commercials praised it. Thousands of companies were sold on the promise. Even kids were impressed. In one moment from the era, a child excitedly explained to his mom, "It's just an office joke," but it came through the fax. That was the power of faxing. Instantaneous, tangible, and totally futuristic. Of course, with today's smartphones, cloud storage, and instant messaging, that miracle now feels a bit overhyped. One jokester even called the fax machine just a waffle iron with a phone attached. But that's how it goes with tech. What once amazed us becomes quaint in hindsight. Just ask Chandler from Friends in 1995. He was blown away by a laptop with 12 megabytes of RAM. Now we carry 1,000 times that power in our pockets. Still, for its time, faxing felt like the future had arrived. Just say no. In the 1980s, the war on drugs came with a slogan, "Just say no." Championed by First Lady Nancy Reagan, this three-word phrase was everywhere, on posters, TV spots, and in classrooms across America. It was short, catchy, and meant to empower kids to resist peer pressure. But here's the thing, drug addiction isn't that simple. Addiction is a deeply complex issue involving trauma, mental health, environment, and poverty. Telling people to just say no made it sound like all you needed was a little willpower and everything would be fine. It turned a public health crisis into a moral failing, and critics didn't hold back. One frustrated person famously said, "I get angry just thinking about it. Little kids doing drugs. It turns my stomach." And yet, while the campaign raised awareness, studies have shown it didn't significantly reduce drug use. Instead, it left many feeling judged rather than helped. Even Nancy Reagan later admitted the slogan may have oversimplified things. Good intentions? Absolutely. Effective strategy? Not so much. In hindsight, Just Say No is one of the most memorable but cringiest attempts at fixing a national crisis with a soundbite. Lace fingerless gloves. Thanks to Madonna, one of the oddest yet most iconic fashion items of the 80s was born. Fingerless lace gloves. Elegant, edgy, incredibly impractical? Yes, to all three. These delicate, often black or white gloves became the ultimate accessory for teens who wanted to look rebellious and romantic. You'd see them paired with fishnet tops, teased hair, crosses, pearls, and that unmistakable material girl attitude. Suddenly, gloves weren't just for church or winter. They were for style, baby. But what exactly were they protecting your hands from? Certainly not the cold. And let's face it, they weren't all that comfortable. The moment you tried to do anything useful, like write, eat, or dance too hard, they'd slide around or get tangled up in your bracelets. Still, they made a statement. If you wore lace gloves to school, you were letting the world know you were bold, dramatic, and a little bit dangerous. These days, they live mostly in costume shops and 80s-themed parties, but for one shining moment, they were the definition of cool. Thank you for joining us on a trip back in time, exploring products that once promised so much, but couldn't find a place in our hearts and homes. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other interesting stories about history, culture, and the strange things in the world. Share in the comments below. Do you remember any products on this list? Or are there any other failed products from the 80s you'd like us to explore? Goodbye, and see you in the next video.